Now it's okay. For 5 years old, we're okay. But my God, we had arguments.
Yes.
I would like explode, and that's it. We don't talk about it. It's gone.
Yes.
Oh no. But I have to say, he's brilliant about, and as much as he annoyed me, and there are things also I've seen him evolve as a person, but I don't want to change him too much because it's his creativity in his head.
We know what he does.
Yes, so I don't want to modify that. On 2 instances, we have politely declined working the landlords. We just didn't feel it.
Yes. Just how the landlord was and the
fixed that he had said, and it's very bizarre. But we thought,
and ultimately it's a kind of partnership, isn't it? So you want to like the people you're working with, because if you don't, and if you get that sense at the beginning, it doesn't seem quite right, but you go ahead anyway, usually it's a sign there's going to be problems further down the road.
Yes.
Blandine, you've done an amazing amount of things in a short period of time. £5 million in just 4 years of starting in property. Although you haven't had a background in property, you've done little bits of property in the background and been more focused on property over the last 4 years. So before we get into what that is or what that looks like, take us back to the beginnings. You're not from the UK. What appealed about this cold, miserable weather?
I was supposed to come. First of all, thank you very much for having me here today. I am French. I'm Blandine. I came 31 years ago. Never looked back ever since, you would know. But initially, I come from a very remote village, very humble background. From France, to Lyon, Grenoble. I grew up in a farm where there are cows around. My dad was electrician by trade. My mom was a cleaner in old people's home, and I did my A-levels. Wanted to work in the travel industry. Couldn't speak any word of English. Couldn't understand jack, and I had to come here. My English teacher at the time used to throw the copies back at me, saying, "You'll never be able to speak English anyway." That is not a very good encouragement, but so I came.
Picking straight the driver as well. Yeah, I'll show you. Right?
Okay, yes, but at the time, and when you're young, you don't feel that way.
It doesn't help.
No. But I did come here very reluctantly, and I have to say, I hated England. I hated English. I hated Beach. 2 weeks in, only a full night, and I loved it. And I knew I would never go back to France. And I'm as passionate today as I am when I first saw it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
And you came into London, so kind of full on at starting to learn to drive on the motorway, as it were.
Yeah. But I arrived as an au pair.
Yes.
So I was dealing with the children's family in the morning. I used to go to the au pair school girl in the afternoon to learn English. In the evening, I used to have my first shifts as a waitress in a fish and chip shop. After my shift, I would go back home, then study English. And in them days, you had that big dictionary translating every single word that I didn't know. Then eventually go back to bed. But in the morning, all over again.
Wow.
The kids learning English at the little school, the waitressing and bathing, and the studying.
So you wanted to do travel and tourism. So how did it evolve then from that? So you did that for what period of time before you were?
So I was au pair for about 9 months, or a year. And the intention initially was to go back to France to a travel and tourism course. But my first English boyfriend at the time said, well, you can do it over here, and it's better on your salary. So I went to Hendon College in North London during intensive travel and tourism course. At the end of that, we had work experience, and they kept me on, and then that's how I started to work in the travel industry.
Okay. And so this was early 90s?
That's very early 90s, yes.
Okay. And when did you first start getting the bug for property?
I had a trigger. I didn't have a bug at first, but so I arrived in the UK in 1993. That always makes me laugh because my kids, when I start saying 19 something, and they think I'm a dinosaur, so So 1993, I arrived in the UK. And then in 1997, my parents got evicted. Okay. And that to me was so, I was so horrified. I swore that nothing like this would ever happen to me. And it just so happened that at the time I came across an advert saying, why do you rent when you can buy? And I showed that to my colleagues at the time, and they said, no, don't do it. It looks dodgy. And just like your parents, when they tell you not to do something, you cannot do it. And I went for viewings, and it was absolutely a completely legitimate family-run company. Okay, buying property off auctions, do them up, and then sell them at a less
Slightly reduced price
than
for investors.
Absolutely.
Okay, and they're making essentially a profit by selling lots of these. Okay,
Absolutely. And so that was the format, and to me it was great because it went in. There was an incentive as well. They were giving 5% of value of the property back. So my little flat for £42,000 at the time, I think I had like £5,000 where I could buy, a bed, a washing machine, a cooker, and a fridge. So that was super nice. So from them, that was a very good incentive. And if you put back into context, in them days, you had 100% mortgages. I didn't have any deposits, and I didn't have to put any deposit down.
Yeah.
So this is the very first time back in 1997 when I purchased my first flat.
Okay.
And I was heavily criticized still because at the time it was a lot of responsibilities. It was too expensive, and I was too young. I was 23, but I never looked back.
And at that time, this was before you purchased a home. So you purchased an investment property before a home.
So that was my flat where that became I was 20 at the home. Well, that was my very first flat. And I never thought of anything else after that. I had my roof over the head.
And how many years later was the next property?
So the next property, then we go into 2001. 2001.
Then you moved on from the tourism business, or you still
it's my
sector?
Yes. Good question. It's a long. How
Testing on your dates now.
What was I? I can't remember.
That's okay. So you went from travel and tourism, and then you were working in the banking sector, supporting fairly high level executives.
Directors,
yes. And I'm just thinking, when you started thinking about property again, was it at that time, or was it during the time we were?
I think it was probably the same transition where the mind kind of expanded, and that is a very good point. All this time that I have, I'm public speaker now and I'm presenting, and you're the very first person who has actually pointed that out. So yes, it was a transition. But the year 2001, everybody was talking about becoming landlords, buy to let properties. So I got interested. I went to a couple of seminars and conferences, and I actually liked it. Then I understood how to remortgage a property, release the equity, and then reinvest.
Right.
So that was definitely a true.
At that time, there was a lot of off-plan property being sold. That was the buzzword of the time in early 2000. I mean, I didn't get involved till I think 2006, 2007 in property. So, what was your next investment then?
So, because I had remortgaged my little flat, which by then, so from 1997, was worth £42,000, and then in 2001. It was worth £91,000, so more than double. I remortgaged, real estate equity. I was about to buy a 5-bedroom flat in North London, Wolfhampton, for £181,000.
Brand.
And everything got to the stage where we were about to complete, but I got gazumped.
Okay,
and that is not nice. I was 24 hours. Too short, somebody just gets the money.
You've heard the phrase, your network is your net worth, and you'll also hear it in this particular podcast as well. That's because people in property recognize the importance of being connected with other people. Property is a people business, and that's the reason I've been running a networking event for over a decade now. Each and every month we bring like-minded people together, an opportunity for you to come along and meet some of those people and also learn from other people on the stage, learn from myself as well. So make sure you book on to the next meeting. We're on the third Tuesday of every month in Birmingham. Now let's get back to the podcast.
So, for somebody that doesn't maybe not familiar with that term,
Yes.
meaning you were about to complete on the purchase, you'd got everything ready, and somebody else came in last minute with a higher offer and sort of took over, as it were. Yes. And you incur all the losses you've done up to that point, your solicitors, etc., everything already paid for.
Yes. And at the time, it's not very nice. So all the costs are also on. Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. But it meant that I was left with a nice lump of money, and I didn't know
From the remortgage.
And then it just so happened that I went to France to see my family. Everybody is still there. So I went there on a holiday, a few days holiday, and I spoke to my bank manager at the time and said, look, I'm considering investing in property. And they said, we had was wonderful off-plan properties. We work with developers. It was very appealing.
So this is the banker partner with developers offering their product.
Yes, a guaranteed rent. So I didn't have to worry about anything. So that was quite appealing.
Yeah.
Did I do it now?
Was it appealing enough for you to make the decision?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So that's how I got my very first investment in France.
And I guess a really interesting thing is that although in the UK, when we're buying property in Israel, you think about interest-only mortgages, in France and probably much of Europe, it's more repayment mortgages.
Yes, they don't understand. They don't do interest-only mortgage. And also they don't understand and definitely do not do remortgaging. So it's a concept that...
Hence why it's a completely different model there than it is in the UK, which is quite unique here because of these features.
Absolutely. And to be fair, it's a different audience as well. The mindset is very different. The French are not buyers. They're more renters.
Because it's the norm there.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that property, I'm guessing the mortgage probably paid off. You still have it?
No, that's all paid off. I actually never viewed the property. I might been.
Yeah.
But all I know is the local agent or operators, every month I had the income.
Yes.
It covered the cost of the mortgage all along. In a way, this is how it kind of forced me to reinvest because I didn't want to have too much profit. So I reinvested, and that's how I grew the portfolio in France.
Yes. And you were surrounded by a lot of bankers at the time in central London, a lot of high flyers. And what did you learn about money and investing being around that kind of environment, do you think?
So, well, I know they would invest in property, but we never, because it was a personal side of their life.
Yeah.
So we never actually had any conversation. I've learned a lot more later on, but because it was so personal, and they still have that level of, they're the boss, and don't really ask you us. Give me some tips, one or two.
It's interesting that in France, your bank manager was telling you about property, whereas in the UK, banks wouldn't normally talk about property, and they don't even like it as an asset as much, other than taking it as security.
So yes, again, it's very different market, different mindset as well. Investment in France, yes, they don't really see that. But the good side with a French mortgage is it's repayment, but the interest rate is fixed for the length of the loan.
Yes.
So one of the examples I was giving you earlier on, my last project where I've turned a house into flats. One of the flats was supposed to be for my mom, but the interest rate is 1.35% fixed for 25 years.
Yes. Which is phenomenal. You don't get deals like that in the UK in the mortgage product. You hear about it in America, these types of mortgages, and that's also on a repayment. So if your interest is very low, your rental income is chipping away down at the debt end. What sort of term are those mortgages? How long do they run for?
Typically 25 years.
Okay, so 25 years, the asset's paid off for, and you're on it. Very interesting.
And they don't have leasehold as well when it comes to it's yours, it's your, never mind what's the name, the ground or so very different. But again, you learn as you go along, because I didn't know all this, to be fair, many things that I've learned. And then when you realize what works and how it works, you understand the mechanism, then you just replicate.
Yes. And is property then something you constantly thought about at that stage, or was it like you were dipping in and out? And because I know more recently, in the last 5 years, you kind of gone property full time, but up to that point, were you still?
So because I used to invest the very traditional way, until the next deal, you have to save up or remortgage one of the property, or do something that you are in.
How the old school landlords did it. They saved up for a deposit, purchased a house, and remortgaged to some years later to borrow for it.
And to be fair, I thought I was doing pretty well. Bearing in mind that I'm a single mom with my kids with no financial support from their dad, and I was trying to juggle all this.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing pretty well, and then lockdown happened. And then I educated myself. This is the actual wording they use to educate yourself. And my gosh.
It's an eye-opener.
Eye-opener and very, very lucrative. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. I'm absolutely baffled over so many different strategic ways of doing a deal.
Yeah.
And it's not being a vulture or anything, when you're not aware of all this mechanism, you think, they're gonna, they take properties, for next to nothing, or they're vultures. Absolutely not. And when you understand the benefits it has with the seller, us taking over, absolutely amazing. I'm very, very dealing with that.
As I said, when you start thinking about property or learning about property, you quickly discover there are many, many different ways that we can make money from property. How did you pick which was the right one for you to pursue? And something that I haven't talked about, but I'm assuming you didn't have hundreds of £1,000s you'd saved up during that time as well.
No, absolutely not. The thing, life is very, very strange, but I didn't really pick one. It weaves its way, and even now I'm very open to any kind of deals, any kind of format or strategy, as long as it makes sense. But it has been a very, very lovely story. Extremely hard work for the first 2.5 years. But my gosh, it was absolutely brilliant. And we started off, so I've got a JV partner and joint venture partner or business partner.
And tell us about the model that you kind of really follow. I mentioned that, yeah.
Yes. So in this moment in time, we do rent to SA. So we rent a property off landlords, and we have people staying in those units and just service accommodation. So we have cleaners, we have change of linen, except that. So just for people to understand a bit with service accommodation, for those who are not very familiar with this, it's like Airbnb or Booking.com, just so you understand, except that our model is for longer term. So I tend to call it extended relocation program. And we have had people stay. It's like a home away from home. Some have been staying over a year, but they pay on a nightly rate, just like a hotel.
And, I believe in property there is many strategies, and yes, there are lots of ways to make money. But the best strategies are the niches. And rather than just, for example, doing regular rent service accommodation, what you find is a niche there. And so you're providing extended periods of stay rather than a nightly rate, even though I'm guessing they're still paying the equivalent of what the nightly rate would be.
Absolutely. But but it's still cheaper than going to the hotel.
Yes.
And yet they have access to a kitchen, the lounge, and yes, it's definitely a
And what type of people typically stay with you for these?
So we started off, just to rewind a bit, we started off by providing accommodation to the NHS nurses right in the middle of COVID.
Yes.
So during the lockdown, we had spoken to a local hospital, asked if they needed accommodation for their staff. And they said, well, actually, yes, we have nurses coming from India, Malaysia, and Kenya at the time. We're just waiting for the lockdown to be lifted and travel restriction to be lifted. And then as soon as they come in, yes, we will need to accommodate them.
Yeah, the NHS were a massive savior for us for our service accommodation business in the lockdown period as well, because there was no real activity and we had all these costs but very little income, and then providing accommodation to NHS staff, doctors and nurses, really helped us kind of ride through that period. And I guess at that time you were starting, we spotted this, but for a lot of people it's about adapting when the opportunities arise.
Absolutely. I think it must have been hard for those operating on the normal Airbnb and Booking.com, purely because people were not traveling.
I know many people that just returned the properties to the landlords at that time, despite their commitments, to say, well, I can't run these anymore. So it was a challenging time, obviously, for many people. And how did you find that model is the one that works for you? And
so we didn't even know really what we were getting into, but it was very exciting, and at least something was happening. So we've established that, and then the market kind of dictated where to go, and we aimed more at corporate clients, contractors as well, where they want their own bedrooms, and again they have a living room and a kitchen we can use. But corporate clients, yes, definitely. We've got big names now we work with. And whenever they need to be working on a mission in London, then they come to us.
But your location-wise, you're near the filming studios as well, so you've got people in that space, hospitals, as well.
Wherever you're located, you always try to see what's kind of companies there's around and you can service. But we have St. George's Hospital in South London. I'm based near Wimbledon. Collier's Wood is just one stop away. But I'm more southwest. My business partner, Jason, he's based in southeast near Crystal Palace. So we're scooping completely South London. We Chelsea, Battersea, Wembley, Wimbledon, and then all the so Tooting, Broadway, Streatham, Croydon, Greenwich Village, Daptford, and Towerbridge Wood, even more central London.
And with this, you mentioned a joint venture partner. So what was the reason of not doing this on your own? And
I did it my time.
Okay.
And do you know what? Actually, people think, it's okay. I'm sure I can do it on my own. And I had the training, which I really thoroughly enjoyed. Great mentor. But I wasn't on furlough. I was still working for goals. So I was juggling, the learning constantly and the webinars to attend to. And then when Jason contacted me, say, they need accommodation. Do you want to work together? I thought, yeah, why not?
Yes.
I like his approach. He's very down to earth, something that I really value. We're relying on the same principles, so we work well. Different skills, completely different skills. He's more artistic, more. His brain, he's a mess. So we walk into a new property.
Yeah.
And I can see, actually, I enjoy, I just watch him and I can see his brain is going like this, and he knows what color it will be, what kind of furniture it will be. And I hate shopping, you have no idea. So that's great because he does that. And then when we get the delivery, at the time, I used to assemble. So that's me with my screwdriver, assembling everything. he's sourcing the property, he's sourcing the clients, is extremely good at it. I'm extremely good. And with my background, anything to do with logistics, the back office, all the papers, the spreadsheet, the forecast,
the side, the accounting, you're dealing with that. So he's dealing with the property side. And you mentioned some, which I thought was quite interesting there. Personality-wise, you're very different.
Very.
And often we tend to resonate and connect with people like us. So similar personalities sometimes tend to attract.
Oh, yeah, no.
And how did you find working with somebody with a complete different personality?
That's cool.
You have frustration?
So a couple of things. Very different, but we aligned to the same principles. Yeah. So we have the same values, and that is very important. Yeah. And as much as he doesn't like social media, networking, I am the one. And I don't mind. I've got to know many, many people. So instead of being completely opposite, we actually bring our own strength, and we work really nicely together. Now it's okay. For 5 years on, we're okay. But my God, we had arguments.
Yes.
We had
that's what I was leading to. That can be challenging sometimes when personality is different.
I mean, sometimes so much that, I'm ready to stay down and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to know it. I would explode, and that's it. We don't talk about it. It's gone.
Yes.
Oh, no. With Jason, it has to clear the air. And I want to make sure that we are friends again.
Yes.
And he tries saying, don't kiss even more. But I have to say, he's brilliant and as much as he annoyed me. And there are things also I've seen him evolve as a person. But I don't want to change him too much because it's his creativity in his head.
Good at what he does.
Yes. So I don't want to modify that. But there was just a moment in time where we kind of readjust, and it's well balanced now.
And I think it's so important to where people have contrasting styles, because you'll get the most out of each other rather than when it's very similar, because you'll both be really good at certain things and just as bad as other things.
Yeah.
And so it leaves a big gap in the business as well.
And I tell him as well, I'm just a pretty face, but he's good box. So he likes that.
So you know how to work to the strengths.
Yeah. But no, he's good in what he does. And what I do, he wouldn't even want to go near it. So that's perfect.
So over about 4 years of running that business, you turned over about £5 million.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And with the business that you touched on, social media as well, and networking and connection. And we're going to talk more about that and on the importance of that and what that brings. I want to take and get your thoughts on, when you are taking properties on like this from landlords, what tips can you give to somebody who's thinking about or want to approach a landlord to try and take a property on? Why big to me? What do I need to say to them? What can I offer a landlord to take on a property in a rent-to-service accommodation environment?
Yes. So we always took on property only when we knew we had the demands. So obviously, where the person is located or where the property is located to operate, we have to make sure that there is demand. For the landlords, I think we bring on so many benefits to them, because we act, when we say we rent off landlord and then we put people in, it's not subletting. We are actually letting agent without a shop.
Okay.
Right. The agreement we have with the landlords is very different to the one that's
peaceful. So you're operating on the your representative gap. You're representative of the land, rather than and so the subletting.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to, otherwise it's illegal. So we have a management agreement with the landlords, and we give them flexibility. It's in our interest that the landlord feels comfortable working with us. So it can be the length of time that we have the agreement with them. And it can vary from 1 year to 4 or 5 years. It's not us imposing them. We are not like a corporate company, imposing. It's whatever they feel. We had landlords, they preferred a year that we can renew every year. And we've been working with them for 4 years. And obviously by now the trust is really established, and that's how they prefer, and that's fine. So we don't charge. Letting agents agency, they charge a fee to the landlords. We don't, absolutely not. We cover all the maintenance unless it's the boiler, all the structural
Mesh major items. Yeah.
Yes, we cover absolutely.
I don't want to deal with.
That's not it. And to be fair, we churn so much that we can actually afford it, and it's a cost anyway. Yeah. So if anything, it reduces our tax to pay. So, and then that keeps the landlord very happy because obviously they don't have to deal with that. Because it's based on the serviced accommodation model, it's kept in a showroom room condition. So just like when you walk into a hotel, I mean, any furniture, we bring our furniture in. I know at the beginning, because it was tight, we didn't have much money. We took on second-hand furniture, and it was absolutely fine. Now we buy everything. We don't rent, we buy our furniture. And most of the time when we have to give the property back, we even need the furniture if the landlord is okay with it, because it's, in a way, it's a blather to...
Yes, yeah, it can people hassle moving it around and then it's staying with.
Because some of the landlords we have to give to the property back was organically finishing the agreement.
Okay.
And with the market nowadays, many landlords are actually selling their property.
Yes.
So again, because the way how it's set up is so quite nice, it's showcasing the property and it's more attractive.
Yeah.
For
someone like staging it.
Yes.
Yes, because it's every day, feels homely as well, the way it's laid out.
Now the landlords usually they like working with us as well. They want to avoid the letting agent fees, and they will do it. It's very rigid. It's scripted. Whereas us, it's always been in our interest that people who stays, they feel at home, so they look after the place. And we have regular inspections anyway.
Yes. And with the properties, do you go looking for the landlords? Do you do some marketing that bring them to you? How
So
find the landlords?
Word of mouth, social media, and landlords, when they have one property that they can't deal with the property themselves, if you have, and to be fair, if you have one property, it's okay, that you can manage. But it usually means that they have more than just one property. But you still don't know how many properties they have. But after a while, when time is key, I always say time is key. Once they observe how you operate, the interaction we have, how we execute things, the service we provide. Once again, organically, when one of their properties become available, they say, "Oh, I've got this one. Would you be interested in taking on this one as well?" And it's like, "Oh, yes." I mean, the one in Dartford, we were scooping South London. The one in Dartford is quite far away for
a distance out. Yeah,
but it's from the same landlord, and we've got 4 property from me.
Right.
And we don't want to. We say, "Yeah, we'll take it," because in case they find another operator, then. But
I fancy working with you as well, sir.
And he's really nice. Now, talking about being nice, and being happy working together. On 2 instances, we have politely declined working with the landlords. We just didn't feel it.
Yes. Just how the landlord was and the...
Yeah, we fixed things that he had said, and it's very bizarre, but we thought...
And ultimately, it's a kind of partnership, isn't it? So you want to like the people you're working with, because if you don't, and if you get that sense at the beginning, it doesn't seem quite right, but you go ahead anyway, usually it's a sign there's going to be problems further down the road.
Yes, absolutely. But our landlords, we absolutely adore them. They're really nice people. They've been very supportive. They know exactly what we're doing. And some are located as far as Ecuador. We've got one in Dubai, one in France, one in New York.
Yes. The landlords are out and the properties be looked after
Yeah.
and maintain for.
And then when they come back into the UK, they come and review them. And obviously, yes, to local landlords, and we have regular chats. So most of the time, they don't even hear from us.
Yes. And you mentioned you don't charge them a fee.
No.
So what's the model? How do you create a profit?
So because we don't have tenants, so it's not a monthly payment that we receive. It's the people who have been relocated temporarily in our units.
Yes.
And just like a hotel, we charge them by the night. Your fees.
Oh, well, if you need to share, that's...
Right. So depending of the location, depending of the size of the property and how many people there are, if they have pets or not, there are many different little elements to take into account.
What's around make up the rate?
But one of our biggest earners, so when I present to people, I've got a screenshot of a spreadsheet, and our biggest earner, our biggest unit that earns us 11k net per month.
11k net a month. Wow. From one property. That's fun.
£400 the night.
Yes.
And I think the property is £250,000 for us to rent.
Okay.
From the landlords.
Right.
So in a couple of nights.
Yes.
Well, 4 or 5 nights.
Yes.
That's it. And
So you will have a guaranteed rent to the landlord?
we have, so there are two ways of doing it. Either you guarantee the rent to the landlord. So for example, £2,500 that you pay. Or you can work with the landlords on a management agreement. And that percentage vary can be 12, 15, 18, 20 cents. You do not pay any rent, but anyone that you bring into their property that you charge, then you retain a percentage and the rest to the, okay. And we don't have any bills or anything to pay. With the guaranteed rent, we have to cover not only the rent, but also utility bills, water, Wi-Fi, council tax, TV license. But we still have less.
And that's, I think that's a really smart approach, because you're focusing on nurturing the relationships with the landlords, and then you have different models in terms of how you can work with them, rather than going up to a particular landlord and say, let us take a property on, we'll do this, that, and the other. And so you're working on the relationship side and then coming up with a solution that might suit that individual better. We also, before we were talking about off camera, about sweet spot in terms of the number of units, because it's systemization and processes and things. So how have you found that number? What do you think that number is? And how does that work well for you?
So we find at the moment we've got 28 units. Again, scoping South London. We came up to 30 at one point. 2 of the units we have to keep them back because they had to sell. Well, one to sell and one they had to take it back to have their daughters log them. So fair enough. The 30 was we find that it was good. We didn't have to have more. We didn't have to have more employees, or the system works, but it was it's just borderline stretching. Okay, 35 might be a possibility, but then you still have to manage to fill those units, right? So there's a bit of a pressure, and 30 for us would be perfect. So bearing in mind that we don't want to expend too much, because then we will have to take paying employees and.
Yeah, because then it's a step up, because, for example, even if you're paying, £2,500 a month to a member of staff, when you go, let's say, past 30, you need a member of staff. Well, your cost of now just gone £2,500 a month. You may only have 1 or 2 units more.
Yes.
And so there's a period where you don't really make any more money, even though you're growing. So making the conscious decision, we're going to stay at this size because it works really well for us and it's profitable and gives us what we want.
Yes.
As, you said.
And to be fair, we earn a nice amount of money. We also don't want to lose that sense of nurturing what we have. We don't want to become a big corporation where we just put people in properties. What we do, it's very meticulous and
Yes, I sense that you manage relationships really well, and they've been really held into the process.
That's very apparent. That's yes, and also that will always be our baby because we built it ground up.
Yes,
but we want to do things alongside as well, which most probably will be bought in on premise. But yes, we need stimulation as well.
and in growing and building a business like this, when you've been running for over 4 years now, what are some of the challenges that someone who's thinking about doing this needs to be aware of or consider?
Education, big time. Having the right people for guidance, that's paramount. Since 1997 that I bought my very first little flats, and then I started a little bit. I thought I was doing pretty okay in property, but the amount of information I learned during lockdown, it's phenomenal. One, I didn't know it was existing, and you have to have the mindset to start. We are so conditioned about the routine that we've been
Getting outside of that thinking.
But once you understand and once you can see, there's no way back.
Yes.
The first few years you have to work hard. You have to work hard because we don't generate sufficient money to actually live off it. So carry on working, but start learning, start understanding. Go and meet people who are successful and have established things like this, because there's not only information that you learn from them, but there's a kind of not an aura, but there's
it can be quite inspiring. It can be quite inspiring when we are speaking to somebody who's doing what we want to do, and we can see it actually is possible. They're doing it just like me, or maybe I can do it too.
But the first step is hard.
Yes.
One step at a time, learning first, because you don't know what you don't know. Simple as that. And it's no one's fault as such, because we just know. But there are many ways, and you have also, it's brilliant. The amount of knowledge that we can learn and build upon, it's amazing. And then people having the same interest and being on the same wavelength, you just exchange and you
Yes. Yeah, you're in an environment of like-minded people. It creates a buzz. It's a great way to learn from each other as well, and a support network. And I'm definitely a big fan of those. I'm constantly learning myself. I'm always learning, trying to improve, get better at what we do.
But you know what? Just in case people watching, it's not to make more money or anything. It's ways of, I don't know. It's not a challenge, but it's like, yes, improving. Finding ways. It's more the stimulation of it rather than it will bring. And I think that's where it worked quite well with Jason, because we were not for the money.
Yeah.
But we knew we had to start something.
Yeah, we wanted to build something, and it's a case of, right, we're not going to make money music from this. We've got a vision on something we want to try and create, and start working on that, and then
try to create, right? Now, if you put that into context, again, remember, lockdown, COVID, it was the end of the world. Everybody was supposed to die. And we even thought, is it worth starting? My gosh, thank God we did.
Yes,
thank God we did.
Yeah.
So you never know. That's the thing. You never know what's next. But start. Because, and I always say, you have to do it. You must do it. Because you will never know otherwise. And I'm not the sort of person to live with what if.
Yes. Yeah. Why would we set you for mediocre when we know we are capable of so much more? Keep striving.
For education, learning from the right people.
Yes.
Usually.
I remember something you mentioned earlier on that although you worked in corporate for quite a long time, you can't ever see yourself going back to something like that. Or now that you're building your own business and you create the lifestyle that you want, you would never want to go back to that.
So I worked for other 18 years in a high street bank, making my way up to very senior people. Work along wonderful people. I have to say, my colleagues, some of them, they were absolutely excellent. But I would never ask. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back. And even if they were paying me £1 billion of sterling or euros, just because the time, and I think as you grow older, you realize that time is going very quick and everything you have to. And yes. So then, obviously the financial freedom, which obviously a huge, lift up such a big burden. But the time of, look, I'm here today. Yesterday, I spent most of the day at the gym with my laptop because they have a desk.
I remember you telling me earlier about laptop at the gym, and I thought, oh, that might tempt me to get to a gym.
It's brilliant. Oh my gosh, if they had a hotel, I would book a room there. Seriously, that much. But yes, you wish. And you manage wherever. Nowadays, it's so much easier as well. Flexible hours are more accepted. Back in the days, you couldn't. You had to be 9 to 5 in the office with your files and everything. Nowadays, with technology, it's so much easier.
And it's more acceptable as well to have a more flexible way of working.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We touched on social media then. Now it's something I want to explore because you do a phenomenal job of being present and active and engaging on social media. Tell me, what was the recognition of that? This is a key part of the business first.
Again, it built up gradually. I never intended to have a certain result out of it. Through my training, it was part of the training that you have to tell people what you do, so then you can get deals, lose connections. I was forced initially to do lives on social media, and it was, oh my gosh, and I was so shy. And now at any time, because we could do 1 hour, no problem at all. I actually really enjoy the social media. Again, I came across really great people with great supports. I post about everything and nothing. I do network a lot, so that gets reported on my feed. The people that I met, where I was. So people now think that I'm a party girl. Which, if there is...
I'll send you a socialite, Peter. You're always at the places to be seen.
But anyone being on the fence on social media, it's a very, very powerful tool. And never underestimate people that you think, they're not watching, don't have many likes or comments.
Yes.
Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled.
People that I'm engaging doesn't mean people aren't watching. Yes.
I'm watching what I'm saying, yeah. However, I tend to press a like and comments because I know it's not everybody cup of tea to post. So I'm always very encouraging. And if it's live, I'm very thrilled because I know it takes a lot of courage.
Yes, and I think I'll use that opportunity to say, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, you absolutely must. And make sure you click on that like button as well. And tell us in the comments, what is it about this video you're particularly enjoying? That was a nice community opportunity there, which fits. But with your social media, will you say you were intentional about, I need to get deals, I need to get connection? Or was it a case of, I'll just start and see where it takes me?
Yes, the exercise was just to post about everything and nothing, about property initially. And then I saw the traction. I saw the support that then people were starting to get in touch, knowing about a landlord, yes, trying to rent their property, but they didn't know to go about it. And so the landlords that we have in New York was actually 2 people, a friend of mine who posted, no, sorry, I apologize. Somebody posted in a group and a friend of mine tagged me.
Okay.
So then eventually they contacted me. We met up for an initial chat. And then and then got me connected with the person in New York. We got on well. In the meantime, about 6-9 months later, that chap gave us a property himself.
Right. The one that initially did the connection.
Yeah. And it's like a couple,
Yeah.
probably, but on the pipeline. We were just waiting when it's the...
So it's really a case of, let's just use it as an open networking opportunity. An opportunity will come.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also for ourselves to observe, again, time is key. You can see, people, what they've been up to, how they delivered, how they interact with other people.
Yes.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. However, I have to say, sometimes be mindful what is put on social media is not the true reality. Yeah. It's very much glorified and amplified and everything, and sometimes not that much. So don't get too overexcited about things.
Yeah. And people used to dress things up on social media.
Yes.
And so we should be aware of that.
Yeah.
That a lot of that does happen.
Absolutely. But it's a great, great tool. And, I always explain, lives especially are very scary at first because like, oh my gosh, all these people are going to watch. Simply just think that you're talking to a friend. After all, anyone not interested, they will scroll.
Yes.
Scroll down and then think that you're on a FaceTime or, video call to a friend, and you're just explaining, you're showing around. And there's no right or wrong. If you forget to mention something, they wouldn't know because...
Yeah. There's a script or something up on there.
Yes. So there's never right or wrong. Keep it nice, short, mostly nowadays, but it's really great tool.
And are you an active networker as well, going to network meetings?
Oh, usually. And the thing is, I've been on the circuit for a while now, so I know which ones are more valuable than not. And again, the consistency of it. People might not know you at first, but because you go regularly, then they get to know you gradually, and then the next thing you know, they will invite you to another network event.
Yes.
This is what's happening recently, and now I get invites that have nothing to do related with property.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm going to Piccadilly for a charity for dogs trained for people with epilepsy, and
Right.
I'm very supportive of any kind of charity, really, because I know there are people passionate about a certain topic which help other people. So any sort of charity, I'm very supportive. So I'm going there to tomorrow and looking forward to it. I will do a post about it. So the power of social media means that they have free marketing.
Yes.
Their charity will be spoken about. It gives me a kind of platform to talk about something. So it works in more ways, and it provides entertainment for other people watching.
I think you're meeting more and more interesting people all the time. That's why.
So each network that I attend, I don't necessarily speak to everyone because it's impossible. And also the handful of people that I do speak with, it would be more meaningful. And there would be a nice little connection that next time when we meet again, then it will be even nicer.
And in a situation like that, when someone thinking about networking all day, they're looking for tips. And you mentioned that speaking to a few people but having valuable conversation rather than lots of short, brief conversation. How would you identify who you should be speaking to, or would you think about this before you go? I'm looking to connect to this type of person.
Yes, so depending on the events, I do have a little research. Most of the time, not all the time, but some of the time, it's very in our niche. So it's for the business. It's very paramount that I sneak and speak to those people. So I have a list of attendees if I can, and with Jason would discuss. Okay, fine. So that's kind of targeted.
Yeah.
But again, I don't go like a vulture. And it's something very, very settled.
Yeah.
Some I haven't even managed to speak to them, but never mind. There will be time. There will be time. And like anything else, just enjoy, because even if you haven't spoken to that person, the ones that you have spoken to, again, if they are in the same environment, they're equally, important to your hands in talking.
One thing I found really beneficial is connecting with the hosts of the event, because when you go to an event, there might be some people you want to see or speak to, and there might be some people, lots of other people want to speak to as well. It's quite difficult to have a conversation with them then, but it's the host that's brought them there.
They are here at all because they are the one with all everybody's connections. Why do you think that I always think, the organizer, the ex?
Yeah, that's very, very smart move. I think when you can connect with the host can open so many doors for you as the event as well. So I think that's definitely.
And we have had, subsequently, we have had introductions to other people to other business.
Before we start wrapping up, one other thing I want to talk about is we've known about lots of things that are really nice, but you've also had joint venture experience that hasn't been so nice as well. So tell us about what you can share around that particular project and a few things that we should be thinking about when we are looking for a potential joint venture partner.
Yes, that was not very nice. So my very, very first JV partner, we got on well. Again, you have to put into context so you understand a bit better. But again, lockdown. I had just finished my training about no money down to rent. And a month later, we agreed to buy a property on auction. It was actually a blind auction. We couldn't even view it before the auction date. We had spoken to the neighbors. My main concern was if there were any squatters in the property. Anything else, it's a terrace being, so structurally speaking, it should be okay. And there wasn't any squatters. So we bought the property. Having done the no money down course, I thought, no problem. I get an investor. Yes. And fast forward, somehow we had 14 days to complete from this one. Very short completion day. Very, 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 very short. But anyway, all I knew is the next thing I knew, I become the angel investor. So I need to put to remortgage my own home to get some cash and we were. Anyway, that's another story. Never mind that. But I became the financial investor, and my JV partner oversaw the refurb, which he did a good job, I have to say. As it was locked down, things got delayed because of the material and everything, but that's normal. I don't blame him. And he did a good job, really nice refurb. And then he was supposed to look after the Airbnb format on this one down in Plymouth. And then we got the first few bookings and everything. So that was his own project, if you would, to operate. I was focusing so much in London with Jason, and we could see the potential, and I was, really focused on that. And then I started to see some anomaly and things that were not quite right. When the bridging loan was ending, few months prior, I spotted that we had only bookings coming in just covering the bridging repayments. And I thought, that's a bit dull. I mean, it was like right in the summertime, but okay, give the benefit of the doubt. And then when the bridging loan ended, no more booking at all. So we started to default, and I had to pay. And then few months has passed because I was so focusing. We've got a very good, successful business because I was really working on it. Yes. Completely dismissing everything else. But eventually, a few months later, jump on the train, go down to Plymouth to see what's happening. And there was a couple just for a week, but it was occupied.
Okay.
So
there was somebody there, but you were unaware. You thought you were get booked into them.
yes, I probably was until the time didn't work. Maybe the location, or I don't know. Too much competition. You never know. So I apologize. I'm terribly sorry. I wasn't aware you were here, but I apologize. Speak to the neighbors downstairs, and you always have a noisy neighbor. Yes, she's lovely, by the way. Yeah, she knows what's happening basically. But I spoke to her, and she confirmed that yes, it has been occupied and with different guests.
Your SA property is doing really well. Lots of people are coming and going, and you were thinking, I didn't think anybody was here.
Yeah, and it's a shock to the system. And then I had to call my JV partner, and I said, "What the going on?" And I mean, I'm very calm now, but you can imagine how.
Yes. Maybe without a shock, you're thinking you're struggling to make this work. In reality, what's happening is you are getting the sales, you are getting the booking for the money.
But you can't even quantify. You don't even know how much it was in the end. And I was really furious. I think it's the first time he actually heard me on the phone. And I was borderline yelling, and it was not nice at all. And I said, look, it's simple. Either you transfer your share back to me and then you step down, and I never, ever want to hear from you ever again. Or I'm going into a full-blown investigation and whatever embezzlement means.
Yes.
And there was I was very firm on that. He dragged his feet a few days, and then he eventually transferred the share over to me and then stepped down. But the hardest, she hurts to have lost a friend.
Yeah, and the trust. Yeah.
It was not nice. You don't do that to people. You don't do that to a friend. And as a business partner, the acumen you're supposed to have, you don't do that. If it's not yours, you don't take. And it could have been that he may have, I don't know, financial problem. I don't know. But us.
Right. Yes. It also shows not everybody has the same ethics, and we shouldn't assume everybody has.
Well, to be fair, we were very similar, funny enough. So in skills, so it was a kind of duplication, really.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I brought the financial, support on that. But yeah, sad, very frustrating.
What few learnings can you share to somebody watching this thing for them to be thinking about when they take on a joint venture plan?
But they always use the word due diligence. And I think the word is due diligence. They always use that terminology. But the backgrounds, whatever they achieved, who they've been working with before, what they've done, why are they not working together anymore? Like, be very inquisitive.
Yes.
Because it's like being married. Yeah. Except that you can't really shout at them, but it can be very intense and the communication is very key. Just really check their background.
And I guess also a reporting process, because if something's not working, like for example, in this situation where the bookings has dropped, some kind of regular reporting to understand, right, what's going on, why is that happening, what can we do differently, and that might highlight potential problems.
I mean, with Jason, every 5 minutes I get a bit.
Yes.
I get a message. I mean, anytime. Yeah. So this is where he used to be so messy, where he would talk about his property and then a guest here and then this problem here. And I'm still there, but he didn't tell me he studied here. And it's like, and that's where he became better in his communication of clarifying what he's talking about. I made him explain, but communication, he's absolutely brilliant, and he's not there is nothing that I don't know about the business, because constantly he fits me, and likewise, on my side as well. I mean, I think we're talking more than maybe. I mean, I'm single, but with his like partner, I don't know. I think constantly. Yeah. And I have to say, when we actually, I was mentioning earlier on, when we argued, like, really, really badly, like, that's really, and once I explored it, that's it, I move on. But no, he had to clear, yeah. It's never been like personal. It was for the business, but seen from a different angle. And once we understand that's actually okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yes. And we've got each other's backs, but communication usually they're actually key.
Thanks for that. And I know some people find it hard talking about things that are it can be quite painful as well. And property isn't always a bed of roses. There are challenges as well. So I thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So what's next in the world of Blandine? What's for the next 2, 3, 5 years?
Actually, so on the side of stimulation, I would really want to do a commercial conversion into residential, but specifically Lloyd's branch. So they quite nice.
Have I seen something maybe a little bit personal there? That's where you're working previously.
Well, funny enough, they're
closing. There's lots of closings.
Yeah, they're going into property somehow.
Yes,
thank you.
Yeah.
Wonder why. But anyway, so that's that. But
Yeah.
just as a like a little sidekick.
Yes.
On a longer term, I would really, really want to do anything to do with care homes or the older generation. I lost my parents, my dad in September, my mom had a stroke in October, and then eventually passed away in November.
Okay.
So back to back, loved nurses, and before they passed, I was lucky enough, because I've got the time now, I went to France to see them and spend some time with them. And the work that the care home provided really touched me. So, yeah, in some capacity, in property, the infrastructure or something to do with the elderly. Sorry, I can't even say it.
Oh, and I thank you for sharing that. And it's great that we do work, we provide accommodation, we make money from that. But there's other things that we can do, and there can be a bigger purpose as well. That's certainly having an aspiration like that. I think it's
that would be top.
Yeah. And you put my name down for that, for the old people's support. As a resident.
Do you see the frame, the race, and on the corridor?
Look, thank you so much for coming and spend some time here. I really appreciate it, and sharing your journey as well. And it's so inspiring in terms of what you're doing. Such a short time frame as well. It just shows that, if you go for it, have the drive and the ambition, so much is possible.
And also, I was going to say, I'm not a feminist at all, but there's a moment in time, a period in time in life where we have to be a wife and a mother and everything, and a job if you have one, and you focus on that, and the meantime doesn't exist. And I have to say, it's only temporary. The fire that you have inside is there. But just get the mindset for it, and that's it.
Yes, and it's important we feed that fire as well, so it doesn't dwindle and
absolutely
get put out.
Absolutely, but you feed that with the people you connect with and the regular meetings that you go to the network, and different events. But definitely, you have to culture this. You have to nurture that.
Yes. And so, Blandine, as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to reach out to you?
Yes, so social media, the main platforms of Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok.
Excellent. And what handles or name do you use for those?
My full name, so Blandine, Blandine, and Pais. It's like Paris, but without the R. Blandine Pais.
Thank you. We'll link that on the screen and also in the description as well. Thanks once again so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me.